In this presentation, I will be talking about sexism, but more specifically the gender wage gap. Only in the past century or two has it become normal to find women regularly participating in the workforce. This change was mainly caused by the start of the Great War or World War One. After the women worked during the duration of this war, most women returned home to their more traditional roles as housewives. This was then seen again 30 years later during World War Two. But, despite what women did 30 years before, the women were not so eager to leave their jobs to take up their original positions as housewives. During the 1950s and the 1960s, women experienced a lack of pay in a new world where the majority of women were working. As this was unusual, legislation began to be proposed, and in 1963, this problem seemed to be solved with the Equal Pay Act. The wage gap has been shrinking since this act, but currently still sits at 80.7 cents to a man's dollar, according to an article from Business Insider. These numbers get even lower when looking at different wages for different ethnic groups. For example, on average, African American women make 65 cents compared to a white man's dollar, and Hispanic women make even less at 57 cents, according to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. This further shows the inequality between men and women. This also has a great impact on society by attacking families as well as the women making less wages. The wage gap is hugely affecting pregnant women and mothers. Coming out of college, women actually make more than men on average. Once they start having families, they begin finding themselves falling behind in earnings compared with men. Women's weekly earnings go down when having children, while men's go up 15% when having kids. This also furthers the gap between the already wide weekly earnings gap between men and women. This shows that this wage gap is affecting these women but also their kids, especially in households with single mothers. The single motherhood rate is 21%, which means 1/5 of households rely on women to provide for at least one child. This also has several indirect consequences, like a greater likelihood of these children not receiving an adequate education, as well as them having a higher chance to end up living a criminally active life or being in poverty in their adult years as well. In turn, this wage gap is having an impact on society in a negative way. This effect goes past the women in direct contact with the wage gap, but also indirectly affects kids and in turn everyone in society. This gap is also evident in all different occupations. Looking at statistics from the Institute for Women's Policy Research, they looked at 40 different professions and found that men out-earned women in all 40 professions. The ranges of the percentages made by women compared to men ranged from 71.1% to 96.9%. The wage gap as a whole is troublesome for the economy and for women, and because women are the majority of the population in the world, this affects everyone in society. If the rate of decrease of the wage gap continues at this pace, the wage gap will still exist for another 108 years, according to CBS. This is too long, and I hope that society can find a way to speed up this process and find a way to get women equal pay. This may also have unspeakable effects on children and women in the future, and it may take less than 108 years to leave its mark. Legislators and women also need to work together to find a way to get rid of this wage gap and to get everyone equal pay.